What is up, guys? Burningheavy here. So the footage in the background is me playing on the Crucible of Eternity on my failing Strength Warrior. Strength runes, of course, purchased before they were stupidly expensive. And using a banner like a scrub on a guy who would easily get rezzed. That'll come in a few minutes. But anyway, the topic of today's video, because English is hard, is challenging group content. Specifically in PvE. In World vs. World, challenge group content's everywhere. You gotta use strategy, you gotta use all sorts of stuff. It's really fun, but it does get old, at least for me. So I want to talk about specifically PvE. I think the new Borderlands is going to do great things for World vs. World. And as PvPs is its own thing. I only play it on my Necro. I only really play it with my cousins, so I'm by no means an expert there. But the problem with PvE in this game right now is most of it's just way too easy. You know, you could be running green clerics and fly through a dungeon, no problem. You can solo a dungeon in soldier's gear. The point being that it'd be easier in Zerker, but you could still do it in soldiers. You know, it's that easy. You know, if you want to challenge, I've seen people run through dungeons naked, trying to get challenging content, and it's just not there. You know, stacking, skipping, soft exploits, you know, they're ruining things that could be considered hard. You know, Giganticus Lupicus is a great example. You don't glitch it, you don't wall him, you fight him legit, you know, mostly ranged combat, very high risk, high reward, melee combat, you know, maybe dive in with a warrior, do 100 blades and dive out. It's a hell of a fight. It'll take an hour, it'll take 2 hours. Great mechanics, great fight. You stick him on a wall, and then when he gets to phase 2, you throw down a wall of reflection and drain 3/4 of his health and kill him in a minute. That, well, there goes the hard fight. You know, corner stacking, which people figured out somehow. I don't know how the devs didn't figure it out, but corner stacking, you know, it removes the risk involved with melee combat. You know, the reason they made melee combat hit harder than ranged is because ranged is safer. You know, you can land a few shots before the enemy can start hitting you, so it needs to do less damage. Melee, the idea being, they can hit you a few times before you get into range. And it was meant for balance, and it is balanced in PvP, you know, where things are hard. But in dungeons, I throw my sword with my long sword, greatsword 4. Excuse me. Throw my sword with my greatsword 4. Run back into the corner, throw down banners, 100 blades, and 30 seconds later, at most, those mobs are done. Oh, there's a champion involved, like there are in this video? Oh, well, it's going to take 45 seconds. Whoop-de-frickin' do. And that's annoying. You know, and how did things like this happen? Well, there's not that many dungeons. And the ones there are, there haven't been any new ones. So the really good players keep repeating the dungeons. They do it over and over and over again. And 3 years later, you've had the most efficient thing, because going fast is the only thing left to try and make it interesting. You know, the closest thing to a dungeon is it's like, alright, how much crap can we skip in order to get it done as fast as possible? And that's not really a dungeon anymore. You know, there are dungeon runs where people literally skip everything that isn't a boss. If it's not a boss, alright, gone, skipped. That's not fun to me. You know, when you do get to a boss, there's no mechanics. You knock them into a wall, you stack on top of the boss, stack a bunch of might, and DPS them down in 20 seconds. Where's the fun? I don't know. I mean, that's personal preference. I'm all for that happening, but it's disappointing. You know, and people seeking a challenge, they gotta solo, they gotta do naked, they gotta do elaborate challenges like Wooden Potatoes has done. He has a huge list of everything he's doing to gimp himself, and the personal story is still too easy. But my idea is, in the short term, and I don't know how hard this would be to code, and I don't know how hard this would be to add before the expansion. So, you know, I'd like it pre-expansion. I think it would be amazing pre-expansion. It would keep people interested in the game. But I do think it'd be too hard pre-expansion. But challenge mode. You know, challenge mode dungeons. And don't just add HP to mobs and bosses. You know, raise their levels. So you're adding a little bit of HP, a little bit of toughness. But you're also adding a little bit of power and stuff. But don't make that the whole challenge mode. It's like, alright, now everything's level 84. You Now, that's not enough. Make every single dungeon level 80. You know, you can't do any challenge modes, so you're level 80. I think that would offer people a chance who are level 30 to actually do Ascalonian Catacombs like they're supposed to. You know, of course they're going to offer higher rewards, you know, all that stuff. But the big thing would be the bosses. You know, the trash models are going to be a little bit harder to kill because they have a bit more health, but they're really not going to have any unique mechanics. You're still going to burst them down pretty quick. But the bosses will have unique mechanics. And what I could think of is the Terragriff challenge mode from most recent Living Story. You know, you do it without the challenge mode, things are a bit brighter, you can see his path a bit more, he's not really narrowing it down, he goes a little slower. When he swoops through the middle, there's 3 circles. When it's in the challenge mode, it's like a full line, basically. When he does his shout near the end, there's no way to get to the edge of it and just hang out, and there's my phone. You know, he can't just hang out in the back. You know, avoid it, you have to actually dodge it or have heals off cooldown in order to fight it, you know, things like that. It's a completely different fight. It was actually a pretty hard fight, mostly because you go down, you start over, you know, like a dungeon, and it was actually a ton of fun. And I think something like that, you know, maybe add a few bosses, 1 or 2 to the dungeon, and then, you know, you just made it harder, but people can still get their dungeon armor. They can still get everything from that dungeon. Slower, of course. You know, you're going to earn more dungeon tokens from completing the challenge mode, but people still get everything without actually having to be good. And the people who want that challenge, people who want a little additional cash, people who think it's fun to actually try, will get that challenge. So everyone is happy. The hardcore player has something hardcore. The casual person has something casual. You know, people who don't want bad pug groups or want something easy so that when they do inevitably get a bad pug group, don't get demolished, still have something. You know, it's still easy to get rich, it's still all that, but there's the other option, you know, and I think it would be too difficult to do pre-expansion, but I think post-expansion, this could be something that could really add, you know, to give people motivation to go back to the old dungeons. It would help keep the hardcore people who are like, hey, I want to play your game 16 hours a day. I want to throw my money at your gem store, but I have no reason to play. It's getting boring. There's nothing. Well, here's something, you know, make it so that it's hard, you know. Individual path runs take 2 hours. You know, it's not going to appeal to everyone, but it's going to appeal to a good number of us, you know. The people who still want to fly through it, you know, because it's like, hey, reset's almost here, I want to make some money, they still have the easy mode. The people who's like, alright, I want the hard mode, but, like, give a Magic 5 boost. You know, it's like, alright, this is going to be really hard, but hey, here's an additional 150 points to your Magic Find. You know, of course, give a gold boost. Make it rewarding and challenging. So you're personally rewarded with loot, and you're spiritually, I don't know if that's a good word, rewarded with the feeling of, holy shit, I just did something hard. And again, make it so that if you clear every dungeon on hard mode, which would be a goal of a lot of players, you get a title. You know, a title that's actually hard, like Guild Wars 1 had. You know, there are some titles where not that many people have, you know, or the only reason they do have is because they had 5 years sitting around jerking off waiting for Guild Wars 2. You know, something that 6 months after the expansion, or 6 months after whenever they released this, people still haven't done it, you know, something like that. I think with the X-Pack, I think they need to add something where the loot is a very, very shiny weapon or very, very shiny armor, more so than dungeon armor. You know, dungeon armor looks nice, but it's so easy to get. Make it so it's RNG based, but 0 stat based. You know, make it so you're going to have to clear the dungeon multiple times. People do hate RNG, so maybe make it worth a stupid amount of exclusive tokens to the really hard mode dungeon. You know, like something 4 times as hard as a raw, and only those dungeon tokens have a really, really shiny armor, really, really shiny weapons, and you need a shit ton. You know, like 10 times as much for a full set of Citadel Flame armor as what you need just for 1 weapon. You know, something insane, so that only people who have done it multiple times are going to get this shininess. You know, that's the thing they can add to challenge mode dungeons. It would need to be a unique currency, so that people who just spam the easy mode don't eventually get it. But, you know, something like that. It would avoid RNG, it would avoid stat boosts, but it would be really, really cool looking, and it would show status, because status symbols are important. We like to be able to show off, hey, look at me, I'm a badass. This would give people that opportunity. But what do you think they're going to add with the X-Pack? They say challenging group content. They say it's challenging group PvE content. They said this is not open world. We're making open world more difficult, but when we say challenging group content, it's not that. Does that mean raids? Does that mean guild missions? Does that mean fractals? I'm pretty sure there's going to be new fractals, not just new fractal levels. If they just add levels, that would be so lazy of them. They have said from the day they released fractals that fractals were a way for them to add new dungeons easily, simply, without having to find a new hub, without having to remove dungeon paths. And I agree. I think fractals are great, but they haven't been used to the full potential. I think if they add like 10 new fractals and new fractal levels, people who are masters of fractals already have a shit ton of AR, are already getting additional AR to prepare for these new fractal levels, are happy. It's like, yay, level 70 fractals. And at the same time, the people who are like, well, I don't really want to invest in Ascended stuff, but I enjoy the fractals, I just want to do level 9s. Okay, well, here's 10 new fractals for you to experience. And I think with the masteries, you're going to need to unlock mastery points to unlock the additional AR you need for the new levels, etc., etc., etc. But I think everyone's going to be able to do the new fractals. In addition to that, in the heart of the Maguma jungle, there needs to be new dungeons. They're saying, no, we're not going to have new dungeons. Yes, you are. Quit bullshitting us. If you don't, people are going to be pissed. Maybe not new dungeons in the traditional set, but there should be a few dungeon hubs, a few dungeons with, you know, the story mode with the explorable pass, and they should have the easy mode and the challenge mode. But on top of that, you should have raids. I'm not talking 20-man, 40-man, something insane like that. This game's not really built for that, but I think 10-man raids would be epic. 10 is enough. They're still not waiting around forever for a party, which was one of their reasoning behind a 5-man. 10 is enough that you can't completely be carried. I mean, you can be carried in 5-man even, so there's no real weight to that argument. But 10 is enough that controlling aggro is not nearly as important as it is with higher raids. 10 is enough where people aren't just hanging out in the back, spamming 1-1-1-1-1 until something dies. Now, that's small enough for that, but it's also large enough that you can take on bigger, harder bosses with more mechanics, etc. It's going to need more gear sets. Not necessarily new ones, but more viable gear sets. If it's just still able to be zerked down, it's not going to be that much more difficult, you know, but, well, we don't want the Trinity, and a lot of the community doesn't want the Trinity. Okay, well, why can't you have your Necro be the Condi guy? You know, why can't you have a guy go like, alright, this Husk takes a lot less DPS from us, but he melts just as fast with you. Go, put your bleeds on him, put your fires on him, put your poisons on him. Let's Condi him down. You guys are going to be the primary Condi guys. You're going to be the ones who, you know, this guy has a heal skill. You're going to put a bunch of poison on him so his heal does next to nothing. This guy has regen. Again, poison. This guy flies around a lot. We can't really damage him, but your dots still hurt him. Throw him on. That's your two guys' job. Your job. You're a Guardian or an Ellie or a Shout Warrior. Your job is support. Not necessarily just heal. Your job is support. And this would also be a Ventari and Yarlis Revenant for this. You know, I always forget about him because he's not in the game yet, but this would also be when you have the Revenant. It's going to be like that, and then you guys are support. Your Guardian. You're going to run shouts with Condi clears so that when we're getting smashed with Condis, it's getting cleared right up. You're going to run Save Yourselves and Contemplation of Purity, maybe. You know, you're going to be clearing that. You're going to be using shouts to give buffs. You're going to be possibly running Dungeon Hunter and buffing with your bow. You're going to have your new virtues to jump in and give buffs. You know, think of support more like, alright, well, I'm going to give you guys buffs. I'm going to give you guys regen. You know, Receive the Light, the shout, is an excellent way of being a healer without being a dedicated healer. Without losing any DPS, I can give a hurt party member close to 4 or 5k health just by breathing on him. Only person it gives is me a small amount because it heals myself for about 4k, which is a good heal. And then each pulse I get healed for a few hundred more, so I'm getting the heals. Have one of your Ellies as part of his rotation. Just throw down a water field. It takes 2 seconds. Throw down a water field, throw down a few of your ice blasts, and boom, you're healed. Because of course when you're doing rage sort of things, the bosses take longer. You know, you're going to be there a bit longer. Have a way to control the aggro. Not necessarily tanking, but if you have a warrior who has a taunt, and he sees, alright, this half of the party is screwed, Ellie, throw a water field on it, I'll blast it, I'll taunt him, he'll attack me, I can take the aggro off of me, and you guys can get healed up. He starts attacking me. You're not a hard tank. Your primary role is still the DPS or whatever you initially wanted to, but since you're heavy armor, since you can take the heat, since you have the damage, you can throw down a taunt, throw it real quick, switch the aggro over to you, you get hammered on for a little while, everyone else gets healed up. Or you have 3 guys who are downed. The downed guy is one of the ones who's getting aggro. You can have your ranger who has the trait so that whenever you use the pet skill, he taunts, use that pet skill real quick. The pet taunts. No one else has lost any of their abilities. You've got a ranger who's already traded into Beast Mastery because I think it's a good trait line, and his pet is now attacked. You know, his pet is the one who eats the damage, and that allows you to res your teammate. So you have a very soft trinity where everyone's going to be able to do it. With break bars, you're going to need everyone to be running control, or at least a few people running super duper control. You know, maybe hammer guard, hammer warrior. You're going to have to do this to break him down. You know, you don't want him doing this super heal that heals most of his health back up, so you got to CC him, get him down, break down his break bar. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be fun. That's going to have people running different things. I think a lot of people will still say, well, I still want to run Zerker. That's fine. If you think that you can do the role that Guardian is asked to do in Zerker, do it. And if you can pull it off, that's great. But you might want to think about a gear set that might not exist, but maybe power precision healing power. So that your healing power, you can do a bit more heals, but you're still doing damage. Maybe as a Revenant, you want to go, you know, I want to be a Nomad's Revenant. I think Nomad's Revenant could be fun. There should be opportunities for that to be viable in a dungeon setting. Not necessarily meta, but viable. You know, viable is different than meta. Meta is, this is the best way to do it as fast as possible. Viable is, this is a decent way to do it, and you're not going to slow anyone down too much. You're not going to be dead weight. You know, things where no one is forced to heal, but if someone wants to heal, they're going to help. If someone wants to run Cleric's Ellie, you should be able to. And it shouldn't be so much easier that, alright, well, now we need Cleric's Ellies, but it should be, alright, this is going to be a little bit easier. I can, instead of being a little bit tankier to try and survive more, I can go full out, you know, aggressive because I know this Ellie's going to pop some heals. Your Guardian can go, okay, this Ellie's going to be healing us, so now, instead of, you know, doing some support shouts, I can go meditations, worry about myself a bit more, do a bit more DPS, and, you know, go that route. I'm going to stop using the staff. I'm going to switch back over to my sword and my torch. You know, stuff like that would make it viable. But make it... I honestly don't know how to make it so that Zerker isn't the only way. Maybe 10 Zerkers smashing their face against their keyboards will still be the fastest way because they don't want hard rolls. But I think they're going to make it so that pure Zerker, the fights are going to take too long and you eventually will screw up. You're not going to have your guy in Nomads who's rezzing. You know, you're not going to have people like that, and it's going to suck, and it's going to be hard. But I think it's not going to be, alright, well, you failed because you didn't have a Cleric's Ellie. It's going to be, you failed because you didn't have anyone supporting. Who's going to start supporting now? The warrior. He can go, shouts. You can have your fucking warrior still in failing strength supporting everybody with their healing, because shouts, if you trade it, can heal. You know, you can have your Ellie go, alright, well, I'm just going to throw down water fields, it's going to heal. I'm not in Cleric's gear, but it's still going to be able to heal us up a little bit because we were really close to getting it done. Throws down the water fields, and boom, it's helped. Maybe you're like, alright, well, now we want an engineer in our party because you can throw down a healing turret. We're still stacking, we're still doing massive DPS, but that healing target is getting us up just enough to put us over that edge. You know, maybe it's like, all right, we don't have anyone who can do hard support, but my warrior is a freaking tank. He can taunt. Whenever you guys are low, tell me. I'll taunt. I'll take a few hits. I'm really good at dodges. Let me take the few hits, and then you guys can get healed back up, res back up, whatever. Make it so there's multiple ways to do it. There's no forced way. You have to do it this way, or else you're either going to fail or take forever. You know, and I think that would be really, really exciting. I've rambled on enough. I want to know what you think can be done to help with challenging group content. What do you think of the idea of challenge mode dungeons? Do you think my ideas are good? Do you think I'll actually add replayability to the dungeons by, you know, increased mechanics to the boss and possibly increased boss content, making everything where you're actually level 80 so you actually feel like you're good? You know, it's like, hey, I actually did the normal amount of damage. Yay! You know, do you think that's a good idea, or do you think you want to be able to let under levels in? Because as it is, you're not level 80, you're not doing dungeons, which kind of ruins leveling for a lot of people. With this switch to hard mode now, everyone's in the level 80 version of the dungeon. Lower level people can start going, okay, I can LFG for a leveling dungeon, and you can get through it at a level. That's how I leveled up. I did dungeons with guildies, you know, and I think that would be nice. But so let me know in the comments what you think of that. Let me know what you think of the possibility of raids. Let me know what you think of them adding dungeons to the content in the new area thingy. And just let me know what you think in the comments section. This has been Burning Heavy, and as always, have a wonderful day.